Some of you won't remember a time before the internet, but many of you will. When the internet was first coming to the masses, there was quite a lot of confusion.
I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in the studio shortly.
What does it mean?
It's a giant computer network made up of started from.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like a computer billboard.
It's not a. It's a computer billboard, but it's nationwide, and it's several universities and everything all joined together.
Right.
And others can access it.
Right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
It came in really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie, and I've been
But you don't need that. You don't need a phone line to operate internet.
No.
In Web 1.0, you had static web pages which were linked together in what can only be described as an early prototype of what Wikipedia is now, jumping through hyperlinks to reach other pages. You went online and you read information people had posted on their websites, and in this model of the internet, the people going online were the consumers of information and the people posting it were the publishers. All of the costs associated with having a website was borne by the publisher of the content, and as a result, a lot of it became a cynical effort at advertising a real bricks and mortar business digitally. This left people asking, why on earth would anyone need a website when all it appears to be is a glorified billboard? Obviously, these same people didn't understand the potential of what was to come. Web 2.0 aimed to fix this read-only internet. We now had forms and ways to upload information and submit queries into websites where it could be stored and processed, and as a result, big websites sprung up that used this information, such as Hotmail, Yahoo, Google, and MySpace. Ultimately, these technologies matured and ended up with what we have today, where some of the largest websites consume what you give them, then they monetize that information in your profile in order to profit from it and at the same time pay for that infrastructure. As you can see, the revenue model has flipped on its head, and this made a lot of companies very wealthy. However, this came at a cost where privacy and ownership of data is concerned. If you upload data into a website, that data usually now belongs to the website and not you. There is an implied permission for them to reuse that information or content as they see fit. This is where one of the pillars of Web 3.0 starts, by changing that ownership back to you. Before we get into how that happens, we need to take a step back and have a look at blockchain technology. In essence, and grossly oversimplifying things, the blockchain is a distributed ledger of transactions that are placed through a trusted mechanism and are immutable and thus cannot change once they are on the blockchain. This is a technology which allows many different use cases. However, the general population really only knows about one use of it. That one use is cryptocurrency. In reality, blockchain has far more uses and has been used for many years in everything from supply chain management to health and finance. The idea with the blockchain is that you are writing a ledger of transactions based on things that have happened in the real world. For instance, when you buy a razor, it probably went through blockchains where the first one is at the manufacturer who is tracking the provenance and assembly of the component parts and which machines they went through and which batches they ended up in and all the other information. And then secondly, when it was sold to a buyer, they may have a second blockchain that then tracks where the box was delivered to and which distribution centres it went to, which trucks it was ultimately placed on and which store it was delivered to. As you can see, the main idea behind its use is to track a source of truth through many stages of its life cycle. This tracking of where something is at any one time is really the basis for the cryptocurrencies. You can track from the creation of a currency through the transactions in and out of wallets that hold these currencies or tokens, and this again allows for a sense of truth and trust. On the one hand, this sense of truth allows for decentralized trading between unknown partners, and on the other side has upset a lot of entities such as governments or corporations and central banks and other parties who see this as a threat to either their business model, political ideals, or just general control over what happens within a country. Under this scenario, everything that goes into a blockchain is usually what's called fungible. What it means to be fungible is that I can take $1 and give it to you, and you give me 4 quarters back, and both sides agree that these are equivalent. In the same way, if I have a Bitcoin or 1 Ether, I can trade these with you, and you will accept them the same as I had given you any other Bitcoin or Ether. This is what fungibility means. You may recently have heard about NFTs, which means non-fungible tokens. Technologically, this is basically the same thing, where you have transactions being written to a blockchain containing data. However, these are non-fungible and therefore not considered equivalent units. Bringing this back to a real-world example, imagine we have 2 tickets to the opera. These would by most accounts be considered non-fungible because one ticket could be for a better seat than the other ticket. Exchanging these would not likely result in each party having the equivalent of what they started off with. As with most general technologies, when they first come out there is a misunderstanding about what they are. Just as you have just learnt that NFTs are basically a unique token. Because people see this being applied to artwork, which is a unique item in its own right, everybody now thinks that NFTs are basically just pictures. As we just saw, this is a fundamental misunderstanding. What is really going on is a transaction is written to the blockchain containing unique data, and that unique data can now be used to track the assets in the same way that standard blockchains do in manufacturing and distribution. But now it's tracking who owns that object. With those objects come privileges and other data. For instance, a plane ticket can be an NFT and it can carry additional data and privileges such as whether your seat comes with a meal, or whether you have an aisle or a window ticket. If that NFT is a character within a game, that NFT can also own other NFTs that describe things such as weaponry, currencies, or skins. The root NFT simply records who owns it. This idea of ownership of digital assets now brings us back around to what we were talking about near the top of this video, where we were mentioning Web 3.0 taking shape. In the same way that we looked at the Today Show clip at the top of this video and saw the confusion with Web 1.0, you can now see the confusion with Web 3.0, where people seem to think that NFTs are purely artwork, instead of treating them as something more similar to unique ticket IDs. If you can understand this much, you are now ahead of the curve. You will also understand how privacy is enhanced and websites can use your assets under a permissions-based system which can be revoked at any time because you are the ultimate owner of that data. Unlike the current system where you upload a status post into Facebook and Facebook now owns that data in perpetuity. In Web 3.0 you can give a website the license to show your uploaded status post, but only for as long as you wish, at which point you can revoke it. The ability to lend your data and revoke it is what is driving the next set of changes within the web. This is not about artwork or baseball cards in digital form or prospecting on the future price of tokens, though this does happen a lot at present. Ultimately, this is about ownership of data. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you want to see more. Bye.